Lesson 4, scale defeats density. So when something scales, we mean it grows large. People who design social media often talk about it scaling up. And one of the curious effects of this increase in group communications complexity is that as a group scales up, the complexity scales up very quickly. So I've drawn up to a group of 5. Here's what the connections look like, even just among a group of 10 people. That's 45 connections just to hold 10 people together. And you can see just from the look of it that it's crazy on the inside. Now, sometimes you want a group of 10 people that are all talking to each other. Everybody knows what everybody else is doing. But if you go from 10 people and 45 connections to 20 people, all of a sudden you have 190 connections. If you go to 50 people, very small group for a business or a large organization, you have over 1,000 connections. 100 people, you have nearly 5,000 connections. 1,000 people, still in terms of ordinary organizations, a relatively small number, 500,000 connections. You can't have 1,000 people spending all of their time managing 500,000 connections. They would have to be talking to each other on the phone all the time, emailing back and forth all the time, SMSing, sending each other WeChat messages. Just the communications overhead among 1,000 people would swamp the group. Scale defeats density, which is to say that when a group goes large, it can't also be tightly connected. This isn't a problem of software design. This isn't even really a problem of human desire. This is a problem of math. There's simply too much complexity in even moderately sized groups for the group to be able to support it. So you start to get groups where not everyone is connected to everybody else. I know someone who knows someone. I'm connected to that person through an intermediary. And this kind of group, the dense group, breaks down, and we start to get sparse groups instead, groups where not everyone is connected to everyone else. Because whatever you might want to have, you cannot have a group that is both large and densely connected. Scale defeats density, and density defeats scale. So if you want to think about the way that scale defeats density and density defeats scale, think about places that work differently at small scale than at large scale in your social life. Imagine showing up to a restaurant with 4 people. Will they have a table that seats 4? Yeah, probably. 8 people? 16? Maybe, maybe not. But at a certain point, the idea of a round table that includes everybody breaks down, and you start to go to multiple tables or long tables. If you show up with 32 people, 64 people, all of a sudden the restaurant has to adapt differently to the group. When you think about musicians, a soloist just plays what they need to play. 2 members of a duet can listen to each other. The 4 members of a string quartet listen especially closely to the first violin. But by the time you're up at an orchestra, you have sections, you have a conductor. It's managed differently, not because the musicians are different, not because the instruments are different. In the restaurant, it's managed differently, not because the chairs are different or the food is different. It's managed differently because the group size is different.